Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to the Caspian coastal city of Azerbaijan and its capital of Baku for the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. We have a very interesting day in store for us here in Azerbaijan. Yes, of course, we're talking about round 4 of the 2018 Formula One World Championship. However, we're also talking about some interesting climatic conditions for today's race. Our ambient temperature currently is 16 degrees Celsius, so kinda chilly out there in Baku on the Caspian coast. The wind chill, however, is 13 C, and the wind speed, rather interestingly, coming out of the west-northwest at 57 kilometers per hour. Yes, you heard me correctly. Wind speed is 57 kilometers per hour here in Baku. Pressure is rather high at 1,020 millibars. However, it is very windy here in Baku, and one of the defining characteristics of the circuit is a nearly 2-kilometer-long straight where crosswinds can definitely wreak havoc with whatever's going on the racing action today. Speaking of the racing action today, we do have a starting grid, of course, and it does read as follows. In pole position for this Azerbaijan Grand Prix is Sebastian Vettel, car number 5, Ferrari. P2, car number 44, Lewis Hamilton of Mercedes. P3, Valtteri Bottas, also of Mercedes. P4, Daniel Ricciardo, the surprise winner of the Chinese Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, lines up 4th on the grid, just in front of his teammate in P5, car number 33, Max Verstappen. P6, a very disappointed Kimi Räikkönen lines up in the second Ferrari. Räikkönen was on for pole position yesterday afternoon until he made an uncharacteristic, unforced error in the final corner of the lap, just before getting on that aforementioned 2 kilometers straight. P7, Esteban Ocon in the first of the Force Indias. P8, his teammate Sergio Perez, the two Force Indias lining up nose to tail. P9, Carlos Sainz in the first of the Renaults. And P10, a Q3 appearance for the young Canadian Lance Stroll. Of course, Lance Stroll finished in P3 in this race last year. A surprise podium could still be in store for the Canadian this year. We shall see. P11, Sergei Sirotkin in the second Williams. So Williams doing a little bit better than they have done in the last couple of weekends. However, they are certainly far behind the front runners. P12, Fernando Alonso in the first of the McLarens. P13, Charles Leclerc in the first of the Saubers. A decent qualifying effort for the young Monegasque. P14, Nico Hülkenberg in the second of the Renaults, ahead of P15, Kevin Magnussen. There's no love lost between those two gentlemen, I am sure. P16 for Stoffel Vandoorne in the second McLaren. P17 for Pierre Gasly in the Toro Rosso, the first of those. P18 rather, Marcus Ericsson in the second of the Saubers there. Ericsson having some issues here just on his reconnaissance laps trying to get to the grid. It is slippery out there. P19, Brendan Hartley in the second of the Toro Rossos, and bringing up the rear in P20, Romain Grosjean. Romain Grosjean having problems in qualifying yesterday. We saw him in tears on the side of the track, so frustrated was he. Hopefully the Frenchman will be able to salvage something from this race in the American Haas car. To those of you who are just joining us, welcome, and I just want to explain a couple of things. This is a live commentary stream. Those of you who have seen this before, you know what this is. Anybody new to this, I'm not allowed to show you any real-world Formula One content, but I am allowed to talk about it, so that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here. You are welcome, of course, to join us in the live chat, and who knows, if you say something funny enough or interesting enough, you might just make it into the stream. Very cool. You're now welcome. Just now joining up with the Sky commentary coverage via ESPN2 here in the United States. It's basically a simulcast. Paddy Lowe of Williams talking to Paul di Resta on the grid. Paddy Lowe saying that Williams are in a position to score points today. Well, it'd definitely be a change of pace for these guys. Change of pace being a facetious statement. Williams have had no pace all year whatsoever. Fernando Alonso now being interviewed on the grid. Fernando knows that he is starting well back in the field in P12. He says there's nothing to lose. There could be points in front of us. Let's go for it. Stand by for a good race from Fernando. Is it just me, or has Paddy Lowe lost every single bit of prestige that he apparently had from his Merc days? Yes, I certainly agree with that. It seems like that whenever an engineer joins Williams nowadays, they kind of become... They're put on the back burner, so to speak. It's almost where good engineers go before they retire nowadays. Of course, Williams used to be the forefront of Grand Prix engineering. The company is called Williams Grand Prix Engineering. Nowadays, Williams desperately needs some proper engineering, and they desperately need some proper driving talent, I must say. This year, with Lance Stroll and Sergei Sirotkin, two pay drivers, two extremely inexperienced drivers. Lance Stroll only has 1 year of experience under his belt, and Sirotkin has less than that. Williams a bit directionless. Felipe Massa, of course, a former Williams driver, has come out this year saying that Williams chose to follow the money instead of the talent, and they're certainly paying for it right now. We'll see what the future holds for Williams, but it certainly is not a particularly rosy picture. Niki Lauda speaking to Paul di Resta on the grid. Jonathan Streitman, good afternoon. I understood that. That would be Dutch. Yes, Kevin Crichton. Williams are tanking, and they've been tanking for about the last 20 years, so at this point it's quite difficult to predict just when they're going to collapse, but they seem closer to it this year than they have been in recent years. Stand by for the national anthem of Azerbaijan. The drivers have assembled at the front of the grid for the ceremonies. This new Formula One tradition of pre-race pageantry certainly does take up a little bit of time. In the old days, as in last year, the formation lap would be just about to get started. Now we are still a good 10 minutes away from that. The interviews continue now on the pre-grid. The mechanics still fettling the cars, Haven't really seen too many drivers yet. We did speak to Fernando Alonso a little bit earlier. However, most of the drivers are still nowhere near their cars. Umbrellas still over the cockpits. Paul di Resta on the pre-grid speaking with Tom Christensen. I believe he's acting as a driver's steward today. Of course, Tom Christensen, Mr. Le Mans. He's won the race more times than anybody else. Very cool to see him here. World Feed picking up the McLaren of Fernando Alonso here on the grid. Mechanics not really doing very much on it. Looks like they finished up all their work early. They're still working on last year's timeline before the race starts. Everybody just standing around the car. Umbilicals plugged in, air being blown through the radiators. The tires are in the blankets. One of the blankets about to blow off there. Fix that, buddy. No activity whatsoever in most of the grid slots at this point. Everybody just standing by waiting to get the car undressed and start the race here. Williams don't have any wheels on the car of Sergei Sirotkin. Interesting to see the varying levels of preparation now occurring. I suppose at this point we should speak as to the merits of having a Grand Prix in a place like Azerbaijan. Certainly it is, I suppose we could call it an up-and-coming locale in the Caspian Sea area. All of these Central Asian countries, most of them anyway, they are former Soviet republics. They have had storied histories, somewhat tumultuous histories in many cases. Azerbaijan has definitely seen a big injection of oil money into its economy in the last 20 years, so the wealth, the standard of wealth, not only for the macrocosmic economy, but for the average person, has certainly increased in the post-Soviet era. Azerbaijan now trying to inject themselves on the world stage by hosting an international sporting event such as a Formula One Grand Prix. The first couple of years of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, they have met mixed reviews. The 2016 race was downright dreadful. It was a procession from start to finish. 2017, however, that was definitely spectacular, and it went all the way to the checkered flag, with Valtteri Bottas stealing second place from Lance Stroll right at the finish line. That was certainly a sight to behold. We'll see what this year's race has in store for us. We've got Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton right next to each other on the start of the grid. This could be an interesting battle. However, do Ferrari have a better car this weekend? Obviously, Vettel on pole. Raikkonen was going to be on pole until he threw it away at the end of his qualifying lap in Q3. At very least, the Ferrari should have locked out the front row, although they have not, so definitely now we do have a battle on our hands, at very least at the race start. Mercedes, on the other hand, they are at a pace deficit. We are now in round 4 of the 2018 World Championship, and we've yet to see Mercedes win. 3 races in succession without a Mercedes win. This has not happened in the turbo hybrid era, going back to 2014. Mercedes are now in quite some trouble if they would like to challenge with either one of their drivers for this year's World Championship. Obviously, we'd have to imagine that they would be backing the reigning world champion, Lewis Hamilton. However, Mercedes not in a position to fight thus far this year. Sebastian Vettel now climbing into the cockpit of the SF-71H, maneuvering his way around the halo. ESPN here in the United States going to a final commercial break before the start of the race. We are expecting uninterrupted coverage of the race itself, courtesy of a car care supplier here in the United States. That was definitely a big marketing move by them. I'm going to be buying all of their products from now on. If one of the Mercedes can get in front of Sebastian Vettel off the line, we could have a race on our hands. It's a little bit unclear to see how the pace of the Mercedes does develop over the course of an opening stint, simply because they haven't really been involved in the opening stint battles at the start of the Grand Prix this year. However, with Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas right behind Sebastian Vettel at the start, one of them is bound to challenge the German. We shall see. Again, the weather conditions here in Baku, they are a bit unsettled. Not in the sense of precipitation necessarily, but 16 degrees C ambient temperature. Wind chill has dropped down to 13 degrees C. The wind, however, is very, very strong. West-northwest at 57 kilometers per hour. 57 kilometers per hour. So the wind speeds are quite high. Pressure is quite high as well, 1,020 millibars. 49% humidity, so I would say chance of rain is quite low. Dew point at 6 degrees C. So we're well out of the territory of getting any fog rolling off of the Caspian, but definitely windy conditions here. The long straight in particular on start-finish, that could be interesting with crosswinds. Sim Racer Flight Sim 1000. First of all, welcome. Secondly, thank you very much for your kind words. I do have to agree, the Formula One race coverage, I can't fault Sky for it. I can't fault ESPN for it here in the United States, but I think the pre-race pageantry and extending this period before the start of the formation lap, it's definitely taken away a little bit from the atmosphere. We're all very used to watching Formula One happen like clockwork. Exactly on the hour the formation lap would begin. Very rarely they would do it on the quarter or the half hour, depending on the time zone. But this 10-minute lull right before the start of the race, it's not working out so well. They've essentially done it just so that they could have a formal pre-race ceremony with the host nation's national anthem played, and I understand that, but why not just do that a little bit earlier and still start the formation lap on the hour? Not sure. Yes, those of you who are keeping tabs on the IndyCar Championship here in the United States, definitely it has been an extremely interesting season. We had a great race to start the year in St. Petersburg in Florida, and then, of course, just last week at Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama, we had a 2-day race because of weather on Sunday. They got about 25 laps or so done on Sunday, and then they had to come back on Monday and finish all of that Monday afternoon. Such was the weather. IndyCar does race in the rain, contrary to popular belief, but the circuit was literally flooded, so there are limits. We now have our tire allocation shown on timing and scoring. Everybody through P1 to P5, starting on the super soft tires, the red sidewall tires. Raikkonen in P6 going down to Sainz in P9 on the ultra softs. We get back down to the softs, new sets of softs now from P10 to P13, Stroll through Leclerc. Ultra softs for Hulkenberg, super softs for Magnussen and Van Dorn, ultra softs for Gasly, super softs for Marcus Ericsson, and then normal soft compounds for Hartley and Grosjean at the back of the grid. Interesting to see that positions 1 through 5 are starting on a scrub set of soft tires. They have exactly 4 laps each on them. And then Raikkonen through Sainz also starting on scrubbed ultra softs. Interesting. Sim Racer Flight Sim 1000. Yes, you are the Deadpool guy. I remember that Deadpool guy. Ergo, I remember you. Welcome back. And I hope your hands have definitely healed by now. Okay, 2 minutes to go before the start of the formation lap. Now things are starting to get serious. The drivers are belted into the cars. The engines are started or being started. Mechanics are just now waiting on the tire blankets to remove them and then to drop the cars on the ground, leaving the drivers alone to do their thing. Daniel Ricciardo, already he has a big smile underneath that crash helmet. Starting from P4 on the grid, he has never won a race from pole position. Therefore, I think Daniel Ricciardo could be sitting pretty, depending on how things unfold in this first stint. How fast are the Red Bulls in a straight line? Definitely that's going to be one of the determining factors today. Lewis Hamilton looking like he's getting ready to get down to business there. And here on pole position, Sebastian Vettel. The mechanics just removing the tire blankets from the SF70H now. Vettel is on the ground and all by himself, focusing on the lights for the start of that formation lap. 2 red lights remain on at the front of the grid. The mechanics have now cleared behind the white lines, as they are obligated to be doing. Some media personnel now running off of the grid as well. 1 red light remains on, standing by for green. The revs are rising. Some oil purge smoke from Hamilton's Mercedes as the cars roll off on the formation lap. Green flags are up and green lights are up. Sim Racing 604, welcome Mike. Good to have you here. It's a little bit early for me. It's got to be really early for you over on the west coast of Canada. Sebastian Vettel leading the field away on a somewhat quickened formation lap. I have to wonder what Ferrari are thinking of doing here. They're certainly thinking of tire temperatures, of course, but I wonder if the Ferrari just has a little bit of trouble keeping itself cool at lower speeds. Lewis Hamilton to Mercedes asking about the weather conditions. Mercedes saying that they're going to remain fairly constant for the duration of the race. Would not be surprised if Hamilton is somewhat concerned about the ambient temperature being rather low. Again, 16 Celsius, so we're only down in the mid-50s Fahrenheit. So it's chilly. You would need at very least a light jacket if you're going to be sitting out there for any extended period. Wind speed, however, very, very high, 57 kilometers per hour according to my numbers. Formula One weather forecasting there on the graphic said 31 kilometers per hour. No matter which way you slice it, it is windy here in Baku. World Feed picking up some young fans looking on from the grandstands. They certainly look happy to be here. The cars now making their way through Sector 3. Sebastian Vettel leading them away rather quickly once again. The field has now returned to the starting grid. The drivers now going through their burnout sequence to build up temperature in the rear tires and find the clutch bite point. Anticipating Vettel and Hamilton to find their grid slots momentarily. First 3 rows of the grid have now assembled, everyone else filing into position behind them. Watching Romain Grosjean now, P20 and last on the grid for Haas. What can the Frenchman do today? Pulling for a good result for him, he deserves something good. Medical car now coming into position at the back of the field, just waiting for Grosjean and Gasly to pick up their grid slots, which they are doing presently. The field is in position now, standing by for the start procedure. Green flags are up, lights are coming up, 4 lights, 5 lights, pause. Lights out, and away we go here in Baku in 2018. Good start by Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton not able to challenge the German into turn 1. Kimi Räikkönen looking up the inside of the two Red Bulls. He's not able to make up any positions, just checking down the field for any incidents. I do believe that everybody has made it through turn 1 unscathed. The Williams and a Force India come together in turn 2. Both the Williams cars touched each other. There was a Force India involved in that as well. I believe that was Sergio Perez. And it appears that we do have further action down there in the back. Lots of sparks being thrown up at the back of the field. Perez and Räikkönen getting together. Perez is out in the barriers. Räikkönen has been hit. He's missing a part of his front wing. The right side of that front wing main plane, the end fence there anyway, is missing. On board with the Williams now, Sergei Sirotkin. He has left front wheel damage. Hard to see if his suspension has been damaged. However, things did not go well for Williams on that start at all. Here's Räikkönen, and that was Esteban Ocon, I beg your pardon, getting together. Ocon punted off directly into the barriers. Räikkönen missing the right side end fence at very least of his front wing, trying to discern with these slow motion replays whether or not there's been any damage to the suspension on that Ferrari. I do not appear to see any. Sergei Sirotkin has stopped right next to Esteban Ocon. Sirotkin made it into the runoff zone, however he is unable to continue. The safety car has now been deployed here on lap 1. Predominantly for the incident of Esteban Ocon, I would believe. Ocon now climbing out of the car. Mercedes in the pit lane. Do we have damage on a Mercedes, or are they just thinking of an alternate strategy? Let's see. Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton next to each other under the safety car. Where have we seen this before? Sim Racing 604, I agree. That was Räikkönen's corner. Ocon just did not give him the space, and he paid dearly for it. On board with Fernando Alonso, who has damage on the right front. It appears just to be the tire. I can't see entirely what the integrity of his front wing is. It appears his front wing is mostly intact. However, his right front tire has gone flat, either damage to the tire via puncture or his wheel damage. Just trying to see the condition of Alonso's car. It appears that if he is able to make it back to the pits, he will be able to continue. Alonso having a lot of trouble negotiating the tight corners here, though. He has well over 50% of his steering diminished. Räikkönen in the pits for Ferrari. Ferrari going for a wing change, of course, and of course swapping out all 4 tires. Very relaxed pit stop from Ferrari. They're not taking any chances. We're behind the safety car. There's no need to rush this. Fernando Alonso has now finally made the pit lane. He touches the wall as he's coming into the pit lane. He is unable to control that McLaren. He actually has both right side tires deflated. The right rear has completely departed the car. He's just riding on the rim now on both the front and rear right side tires. Him getting into the pit box is going to be an interesting ordeal. He cannot turn the car at all to the right. He has no grip. However, he manages to make it into his pit box. He does not run anybody over, and they're having a lot of trouble getting that car off the ground simply because it's only got 2 wheels on it. Unbelievable recovery to the pits by Fernando Alonso. The McLaren boys just lifting the car manually here. They can't get a jack on the front end, obviously, because they have to change the nose. But in addition to that, the nose was on the ground. Unbelievable recovery effort by Fernando Alonso. McLaren just giving some tugs at the suspension, making sure everything is intact. And Alonso now pulls away and gets back out onto the circuit. One of the Saubers in the pit lane as well. That was Marcus Ericsson. What happened to Fernando Alonso? On board with him in replay, Sergei Sirotkin just moves over on him. Sirotkin was trying to avoid one of the Renaults. However, Sirotkin did not see Alonso, and he just turned straight into him in a straight line. Pay drivers. Meanwhile, Working the end of lap 2 of 51 here in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Sebastian Vettel leads Lewis Hamilton, who leads Valtteri Bottas, who leads Daniel Ricciardo in the top 4. Max Verstappen remains where he started in P5. Some of those pit stops will shuffle the order down a little bit more. We'll have to wait for timing and scoring to recycle at the end of this lap. Jonathan, just checking to see if Alonso is still on the lead lap. I believe he is. We just have to wait for timing and scoring to recycle. Romain Grosjean coming into the pits meanwhile, as is Sergio Perez. Fastest lap of the race for the record, Pierre Gasly in P10, 3 minutes, 6 seconds, .705. Apparently in that turn 2 incident on the start, the Saubers made contact as well. That could explain why we saw Marcus Ericsson in the pits. And Ocon, I have to agree, that was just a sloppy bit of situational awareness, or lack thereof. Turning into the corner on the racing line, has no idea that Raikkonen is where he is. Just chops across the front of the Ferrari and wrecks his race. Replay of the start on board with Sergei Sirotkin. He makes it through turn 1 unscathed. However, coming down the short chute into turn 2, Sirotkin rear ends one of the Force Indias. That was Esteban Ocon. Sirotkin makes contact with Nico Hülkenberg in the Renault. That forces him to jink over to the left when he turns in to the side of Fernando Alonso and takes out the right side of Alonso's car. Slow motion wing change from Ferrari. That certainly looks quite impressive. That is choreography as I have never seen it before. Sirotkin now explaining himself to Ocon. And we're now seeing the Baku track marshals sweeping the circuit, trying to get those shards of carbon out of the way. Working lap 3 of 51. On board with Fernando Alonso in an apparently healthy McLaren now. Alonso now running P17. He is the penultimate car running. Ocon and Sirotkin officially out. Fernando Alonso has not lost his charm on the team radio. McLaren telling him that they see some damage to the floor. Alonso's response, unbelievable. You take turn 1, you take turn 2, and already damage. In his words, cover your ears if you're underage, fucking stupid. I love Fernando Alonso. Sebastian Vettel, he is doing some brake testing in front of Lewis Hamilton. Remember what happened here last year. We do not need a Mercedes ramming a Ferrari or a Ferrari ramming a Mercedes. We don't need a repeat of all of that nonsense. Is it replay of that turn 2 incident yet again? Kimi Raikkonen in replay, the radio to Ferrari saying he just turned into me. Speaking, of course, of Esteban Ocon. Meanwhile, the safety car continues to lead the field. The lights are still on the safety car. Not sure when they're going to call the safety car in. It appears that the circuit is clear in the affected areas. Working lap 4 of 51. Still waiting properly to get this race underway. Your order here on lap 4 is Vettel, Hamilton, Bottas, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Sainz, Stroll in P7, Hülkenberg, Gasly, and Leclerc, your top 10. Van Dorn for McLaren in P11. Fernando Alonso in P17. Kimi Räikkönen down in P12. For the record, Marcus Ericsson has the fastest lap of the race at a 2 minutes 9 seconds .002. Jonathan Straitman, that is a bold prediction. This will not be the only safety car. I have to agree with that. We're used to seeing this race being quite fast and frantic. I think we're going to be in for it today. Some damage to the signage there on some of the Tech Pro barriers outside of Turn 2 where Ocon ran into them. The barriers themselves look fine, but the Emirates wrapping on the outside of that barrier has been through the wars already. Sebastian Vettel on the radio to Ferrari saying that some of the brake boards heading into Turn 2 and Turn 3 are out of place. The 50-meter boards in particular are not placed directly across from each other at the same point on the circuit. Could be a bit disorienting for the drivers, especially because most of the corners here look almost identical on approach into the braking zones. Vettel requesting that they send the marshals out there to fix that. We'll see if that happens. There is still appreciable debris out on the circuit. No one appears to be addressing it. The safety car is being called in at this time. The marshals have had 4 laps to clean this up, and there is still debris out there. Anyway, the safety car is coming in, expecting the lights to go out on the safety car anytime now. Sebastian Vettel will become the de facto safety car until the safety car line. When will Vettel decide to drop the hammer and go? Hopefully before Lewis Hamilton decides it's hammer time. On board with Sebastian Vettel, he's just doing some weaving here, trying to get some temperature in his front tires. He's pulled away from the safety car now. He's allowed the safety car to build a little bit of a gap. Looks like the drivers are maintaining healthy gaps between themselves. Nobody really wanting to get their nose into a situation they perhaps can't back out of in this early stage of the race. Should we see another safety car restart later on, I think things could be a little bit more frantic. The 2 Red Bulls running very closely line astern. Ricciardo leading Verstappen. Sebastian Vettel now backing the field up as they approach the final corner of the lap before they get onto that 2-kilometer straight. Lewis Hamilton has pulled right up to the gearbox of Sebastian Vettel. Be careful, Lewis. Green flag is up. Waiting for Sebastian Vettel to accelerate. The green flags are out. He can accelerate. If someone were to try to overtake at this point, would they be wrong? The green flags are displayed. Where is the safety car line? Sebastian Vettel waiting an awfully long time to let everybody go. Sebastian Vettel now drops the hammer, catching everybody out. Halfway down the straight they were before Sebastian Vettel decided to go. However, now across the line to begin lap 6 of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It's the start all over again, essentially. Max Verstappen has made his way past Daniel Ricciardo, I do believe. We're waiting for timing and scoring to confirm that. Yes, Max Verstappen does make a move down the inside into turn 2 on his teammate. Verstappen now up into P4. Carlos Sainz has now overtaken Daniel Ricciardo as well. Carlos Sainz has now overtaken Max Verstappen momentarily. Verstappen returns on the brakes and he retains that 4th place position. Meanwhile, at the sharp end of the field, Vettel leads Hamilton by 1.6 seconds already. Vettel timed that restart brilliantly, although it was extremely late, I must say. The green flags were out for quite some time before Vettel decided to go. Down the order, it appears that we do not have any further incidents on this restart. Everybody has made it through the first couple of sectors of the lap unscathed. Ocon and Sirotkin, of course, out of the race due to the prior incidents. Do we have a problem with one of the Red Bulls there? I'm pretty sure I saw Daniel Ricciardo just cut one of the final corners of the lap. Is he having a handling problem, or what's going on with that Red Bull? Carlos Sainz overtaking Max Verstappen again down the long start-finish straight. That Renault is fast in a straight line. However, Verstappen coming back under braking into turn 1, and he retakes that position. Carlos Sainz definitely is racy today. We haven't seen too much of him so far this year, but when that Renault is hooked up, it can be a very decent car. Of course, the factory Renault and the Red Bull team have basically the same engines on board. Carlos Sainz trying to overtake Verstappen in a straight line. The Renault just does not appear to have quite the same straight line speed as the Red Bull RB14. However, it is quick enough through the corners, and Sainz is able to challenge there through the corners as well as in the acceleration zones. The Red Bull, though, appears to be a little bit more slippery when we start to talk about VMAX. Speaking of VMAX, Sebastian Vettel has already pulled out quite a huge margin over Lewis Hamilton. The gap is just below 3 seconds here working lap 7. The Ferrari is quicker than the Mercedes, definitively. Hamilton radio. Hamilton saying to his engineers that he needs more grip. Well, get a grip, Lewis. Hold the steering wheel a little bit tighter and maybe you'll find more grip there. In all honesty, I'm not entirely sure what Hamilton's issue is. However, I would not be surprised if these somewhat unusual weather conditions are hampering the Mercedes getting its tires up to temperature, because Hamilton just has no pace whatsoever relative to Sebastian Vettel. We said the gap was 3 seconds half a lap ago. Now it is almost 3.5 seconds. Raikkonen radio. Raikkonen asking, am I okay? I touched the wall on the outside. Ferrari says, well, I don't know. Are you okay? No, Kimi says, are the tires okay? Ferrari says, oh, yeah, they're fine. Interesting miscommunications by Ferrari. Verstappen and Sainz continuing their tussle here, working lap 8. DRS has officially been enabled. Something tells me that this battle between Verstappen and Sainz could end in tears. I'm not entirely sure which driver is going to make the first mistake. However, they are going for it. You would think this were the end of the race, but we are a long way away from that. Verstappen and Sainz look to be content to continue swapping positions down the straights. Verstappen always prevailing in the braking zones at the moment. However, Sainz will not go down quietly. Norman Robinson, yes, Hamilton does need a win here today. At the moment, though, it does not appear to be on the card. Something needs to happen to the Ferrari in front, I dare say, in order for Hamilton to be in contention. Kevin Magnussen is in P17, not entirely sure what happened to him. I think he made a pit stop under the safety car, as he's now on the soft compound tires with 6 laps on them, working lap 8 of the race. That means that he made a stop probably on lap 2. Jonathan Straitman, Vettel is pulling that lever like a madman. Yes, of course, if you're not aware, there's a supplemental lever on the back of Sebastian Vettel's steering wheel that we noticed between China and this race, and we're not entirely sure what it does. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz with DRS on Max Verstappen. No contest there, of course. But yes, there's a supplemental lever on the back of Sebastian Vettel's steering wheel. These steering wheels have many levers on the back sides of them. First off, you have your gear shift paddles up on the right, down on the left, although there are some variations on that design. So that's one lever. Usually it's a rocking switch of some sort. In addition to that, they usually have 2 clutch levers fitted. Hand-operated clutch in these cars. There is no third pedal down there in the footwell for the clutch actuation. So hand-operated clutch, that's 2 paddles. Some drivers prefer to have their DRS actuation on the back of the steering wheel via either a switch or another paddle-type switch. But Ferrari are running an additional paddle switch on the back of Sebastian Vettel's steering wheel that is not present on Kimi Räikkönen's steering wheel. And of course, the rumor mill on the internet has had a field day with this, trying to figure out what it could be. It's not a DRS actuation flap. It is not a simple on or off option because there is a potentiometer in that switch. In other words, what Vettel's able to do with that paddle is the amount that he pulls it directly correlates, probably in a linear fashion, to whatever function it actuates. So in other words, it almost has a similar travel to a pedal rather than just an on-off momentary switch. Is that correlated to the engine deploy settings for the hybrid system? Can he just dial up a precise amount of hybrid boost when he wants it? Perhaps that's what it is. Does it have something to do with the brake-by-wire system? Perhaps that's what it is. No one really knows what that is. Could it even be some sort of supplemental clutch control? Could it be something to do with the turbocharger boost pressure? We don't know. But Sebastian Vettel has it on his car. Kimi Räikkönen does not, and Sebastian Vettel's leading this Grand Prix by 3 seconds. However, Lewis Hamilton now sets fastest lap of the race, 1:47.814, so perhaps things are not all over yet for the Englishman's hopes. Sebastian Vettel last time by a 1:47.845. Max Verstappen being vocal on the radio. Verstappen saying that he is so slow on the straights, he wants more power. Christian Horner saying, yeah, just stay where you are with the hybrid modes. We don't need to be blowing this engine up. Yellow flag in Sector 1. Let's see what the cause of this is. And the yellow flag in Sector 1 has been subbed down. Perhaps just a little spin and a quick recovery. We'll wait for some replays. In replay here, Carlos Sainz. Nope, this is Nico Hülkenberg on Daniel Ricciardo. These Renaults are fast. They are really fast in a straight line. The Red Bull comes back to defend. However, the Renault has the inside line and takes the corner. Very interesting to see the comparative pace of the factory Renault cars and the customer Renault cars. Of course, Red Bull running Renault engines. Christian Gaitan, hello. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Lewis Hamilton setting fastest lap yet again, a 1:47.192. Sebastian Vettel last time by a 1:47.506. Hamilton roughly 0.4 faster per lap than Sebastian Vettel at this stage. Is this hammer time, or does Mercedes still have a party mode to come with that power unit? We shall see, but the gap is closing up front. It is now 2.4 seconds. We have a puncture on one of the Renaults. That is Nico Hülkenberg. It is a left rear puncture. We're waiting to see how that happened. On board with Hülkenberg now. He's not even attempting to continue. Hülkenberg pulling off into one of the run-out zones, and he has retired from this race. In replay, what happened to Nico Hülkenberg? I'm expecting contact with another car. No, it wasn't. He lost it all by himself. He just tagged the barriers on the left side. The left rear got the worst of it. Some wheel damage at very least, perhaps suspension damage as well. Hülkenberg did not even try to continue. Nico Hülkenberg becomes, for the record, our third car out of this race. Kevin Magnussen currently the last car running in P17. Lewis Hamilton resetting fastest lap yet again, a 1:47.053. Sebastian Vettel has responded somewhat to Hamilton's pace on the previous lap, his last time by personal best, a 1:47.240. Meanwhile, the two Red Bull teammates are really having a tussle here. Verstappen leads Ricciardo. Ricciardo trying to duck out of Verstappen's slipstream to outbrake the Dutchman. Verstappen has the inside line. Ricciardo has to cede the corner back to Verstappen. Do not take each other out, boys. That's the only advice that I can give for you. Verstappen goes wide. Ricciardo tries to capitalize. He is unable to do so. Verstappen being very defensive here. He's not using all the racetrack. He's just sticking to the inside line through all the corners. It appears to have worked. Ricciardo has backed out of it for the moment. That's not a fight worth having at this still relatively early stage in the Grand Prix. Our current race order is Vettel, Hamilton, Bottas, Sainz in P4, Verstappen, Ricciardo in P5 and 6, Charles Leclerc is up into P7, Lance Stroll in P8, Kimi Räikkönen in P9, and Romain Grosjean in 10th from last on the grid. Very cool. In replay there, the two Red Bulls did actually come together. Relatively minor contact. It was mostly just rubber to rubber. Does not appear to be any damage on either car. However, the Red Bull Brain Trust will not have liked that very much. Undoubtedly, they have told their men to back off. Sebastian Vettel now responding to Lewis Hamilton's pace. Sets fastest lap, 146.825. Vettel, the only car running in the 146s at the moment. Hamilton last time by a 147.989. Kimi had it coming together with Esteban Ocon on lap 1 in turn 2. Ocon just turned in on Räikkönen. The corner was Kimi's, but Esteban did not see him, and, well, Ocon's race ended there. Räikkönen pitted for a right front puncture as well as front wing damage, and obviously he was able to continue. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear on board with Kimi Räikkönen now running in P9 on the soft compound tires, and wow, that is a particularly narrow portion of the circuit there, running past that medieval castle. It is barely wide enough for a single Formula One car. Definitely no overtaking opportunities there. And here on the World Feed, we get the chance for the first time in race broadcast to see these new graphics superimposed over the halo. You can tell me what you think of them. We have obviously integrated a throttle and brake trace, a speedometer, gear position indicator, and engine RPM, all within that arc of the halo section. I don't quite know what to think of that. What do you think of those graphics? Another fastest lap of the race by Sebastian Vettel, 146.825. Vettel the only car lapping in the 46s. We're hearing that both of the Red Bull cars have battery issues. Obviously, they do not appear to be terminal issues, at least not at this time, but they have had to back off their ultimate pace quite a bit. There is a big gap at the front of this field. Sebastian Vettel leading Lewis Hamilton by 4 seconds. Bottas is a further 2 seconds down the road, and then Carlos Sainz is another 10 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. So definitely we have a story of 2 races at the moment. Danny Ricciardo on the radio to Red Bull asking, is the battery even charging? Red Bull telling him, yes, it is charging, it's just a little bit slow. Some more technical gremlins. Kimi Räikkönen asking the pits, why is he getting the DRS so late down the straight? Ferrari saying, we're going to look into that. Let's see, Räikkönen just crossing into the DRS zone now. Does he open the flap? Yes, he does. Appears to be working normally, at least on this lap. Speed difference with DRS. Räikkönen doing 342 kilometers per hour down the straight. Stroll just in front of him. He was in front of him anyway. Räikkönen makes the pass into turn 1. Stroll was doing 308 kilometers per hour. So nearly a 40 kilometer per hour difference in straight line speed with and without DRS. We have another yellow flag in Sector 1. Waiting to see what has caused this and whether or not the incident will resolve itself. Keeping our eyes peeled for anybody stopped on the outside. Yellow flag has been up for quite some time now. Still haven't seen the cause of it. In replay, Kimi Räikkönen overtaking Lance Stroll with DRS assistance. Thank you very much. That was quite easy. We still have a yellow in Sector 1. Trying to figure out what caused that. I don't see anybody stopped on timing and scoring. Perhaps there's just debris. Yes, it was a tree branch that has fallen in these windy conditions in Baku. Yellow flag subbed down. We're back to green flags all around the circuit. Interesting to see that. Perhaps we shouldn't have trees overhanging the catch fencing like that. Fastest lap of the race yet again. Sebastian Vettel, 146.722. Vettel remains the only car running in the 46s. Hamilton last time by a 147.810. Bottas last time by a 147.035. So Bottas is 0.8 a lap faster than his teammate. Carlos Sainz in the pits. Reasonable pit stop by the Renault boys. Sainz resumes the Grand Prix. He's currently down in P13, just waiting for timing and scoring to show him back on the circuit. Shown in P13, and he remains P13. We have super soft tires being used from P1, Sebastian Vettel, all the way down to P6, actually, Charles Leclerc. Räikkönen in P7 is on the soft compound. Ultra softs being used by Brendan Hartley, and then that's it for the remaining runners. The gap at the sharp end of this field continues to grow. 4.4 seconds now is the gap between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton for positions 1 and 2. The Mercedes just does not have the pace to match the Ferrari today. This is quite extraordinary. We've been used to seeing Mercedes dominating Formula 1 since 2014 and the start of the turbo hybrid era. Here we are, round 4 of 2018, and Mercedes once again not looking to be in a position to challenge for a race win. This is quite interesting. Toto Wolff looking on from the Mercedes pits. He appears that he has aged a little bit in the start of this season. Definitely high-stress situations at Mercedes. Could we be seeing the end of the Mercedes dominance in this turbo hybrid formula? We could well be. World Feed picks up Charles Leclerc here. He's currently classified in P7. A great run so far in that Alfa Romeo branded Sauber for the young Monegasque. This is the sort of racing that we were expecting to see from him from round one. Some troubles there for Leclerc at the start of this season. However, he appears to be on song here today. Azerbaijan, though, it is a very different sort of racetrack. There are lots of long straights. It's a stop-start kind of circuit, quite reminiscent of Montreal in terms of its overall allocation of corners versus straights. Hamilton radio. Wind at turn 16 appears to be picking up, was Mercedes' message to Hamilton. However, we're getting an interesting note from race control. DRS detection at detection zone 1 inactive. Manual DRS permitted. So does that mean that the drivers are now on their honor to use DRS within 1 second of the car in front? This could be interesting. Have race control simply opened up the DRS allocation for everybody and they've allowed the teams to enable DRS at will through detection zone 1? That would be quite interesting. We'll have to watch how this works out. This is the first time I can recall ever seeing a DRS detection failure during the Grand Prix. Definitely an interesting turn of events. We'll see if this has any play on what happens here at the start, at the front of the field. Not quite entirely sure what to make of that. If Lewis Hamilton, for example, is able to use DRS at the start of the lap, even though he is 4.7 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel, we definitely have an entirely new race on our hands. Marcus Ericsson driving in reverse here in the run-out zone of one of the corners. Can't quite see where that is. It is in Sector 1. Yellow flag was up and has now been stubbed down. What happened to the Swede? Just loses it under braking a bit, locking up the front axle. Running out of space to get that Sauber stopped. Lewis Hamilton sets fastest lap, a 1:46.597. He joined Sebastian Vettel running in the 46s. I wonder if that was set with DRS on Hamilton's car, even though he's 4 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. Is Hamilton able to use DRS due to the manual activation now, due to the failure in the detection zone? We need to see this. I'm quite interested. On board with Lewis Hamilton, everything looking copacetic on board the Mercedes. Let's see, we're coming up toward the end of the lap. Is Hamilton able to open DRS? Just watching his steering wheel for any indicator lights. I'm not seeing any. It does not appear that he's using DRS. He's just passed the detection line, even though it's basically nullified at this point. Not seeing DRS on the steering wheel, nor am I seeing it in his straight line speed. Lewis Hamilton setting another fastest lap, a 1:46.331. He remains 4.1 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. Turn 2 incident involving Ericsson and Magnussen now under investigation. The official word from race control. I did not see that incident. Was that at the start of the race, perhaps? That extended onboard with Lewis Hamilton, the car appears to be handling just fine. It just doesn't have the all-out pace of the Ferrari. Hamilton did not appear to be working any problems on board. The Ferrari is just straight up quicker, working lap 20 of 51. Ten-second time penalty has now been awarded to Marcus Ericsson, supposedly for causing a collision. Was that at the race start? Because I didn't see any other incidents involving Marcus Ericsson. On board with Sergio Perez here in the Force India. Force India also falling off the boil this year, at least in the first few rounds, because they were actually quite competitive in 2016 and in 2017, but this year they're not quite up as high in the field as perhaps they should have been by this point. Everything looking copacetic on board the Force India as well. The only one remaining in this race, Lewis Hamilton, another fastest lap, 146.120. Yellow flag in Sector 1 has now been subbed down, probably for some debris. Hopefully no more errant tree branches. Sergio Perez now has DRS on Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll bringing the fight to Perez, locking up his right front wheel in the process. Stroll does manage to continue, albeit one spot lower down. Lance Stroll now in P9, Perez in P8. Charles Leclerc still up in P7. Good day for him. Meanwhile, at the front, Sebastian Vettel, not seeing so much of him on television today, but he is just having an absolutely glorious time out there in front. 4 seconds still in front of Lewis Hamilton. Nobody's around him. He's just enjoying this extended test session, basically. Yeah, speaking of Valtteri Bottas, he is in nowhere land. He is 8 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel, which means that he is about 3 seconds behind his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Meanwhile, speaking of Lewis Hamilton, big lockup on the front axle, both front wheels locked up. He missed turn 1. Perhaps Hamilton just caught daydreaming a little bit, or do we have some grip issues on that Mercedes? Hamilton was complaining about a lack of grip earlier on. Perhaps as the tires are wearing in, they're just not giving him what he needs anymore. 2 big lockups there, though, on the front axle for Lewis Hamilton. Big flat spots now on both of his front tires. He is having some trouble getting that car slowed down. Expecting to see Hamilton in the pits at the end of this lap. Hamilton on the radio saying these tires are done. Expecting Hamilton in the pits at the end of this lap. Mercedes running out into the pit lane. We must presume that this is for Lewis Hamilton, as he is coming to the end of the lap. Waiting to see Hamilton duck off into the pits. He's pulled off to the left side of the circuit, and indeed he is now in the pit lane approach. Hamilton now in the pit lane under the speed limiter. He pulls into that Mercedes pit box. Car goes up in the air. 4 off, 4 on. Car drops, and away he goes. Quick stop by the Mercedes boys. 2.8 seconds to be exact. Hamilton has gone on to the soft compound tires, and theoretically he should be good to go to the end of the race, barring any more big lockups like that. Hamilton needs to be careful exiting the pits. I saw him cross that white line as he was just turning left out of the pit lane. We'll have to see if he'll be assessed any penalties for that. The right side tires did cross that white line. Carlos Sainz overtaking one of the McLarens. I believe that is Fernando Alonso. Big speed differential between those two guys due to the DRS being used on the Renault. Another example of the Renault factory cars passing a customer car. McLaren, of course, this year running Renault engines. Fernando Alonso has DRS now on Carlos Sainz through the infield DRS section. World feed cuts away before we see the end of that little maneuver. Fernando Alonso has not been able to overtake Carlos Sainz. It does certainly make sense if we could get Sebastian Vettel in the pits now. The gap between he and Valtteri Bottas is 12.5 seconds. Hamilton a further 10th behind. Sebastian Vettel has not pitted on this lap. One of the Toro Rossos is recovering from the pits in front of Sebastian Vettel. He should be getting blue flags. Waiting for Seb to get on the radio with his characteristic blue flags rant. And there it was, the blue flag for Brendan Hartley. Sebastian Vettel resumes unimpeded. 5-second time penalty now being announced for Sergio Perez, overtaking before the safety car line. That obviously was on the safety car restart on lap 5. Williams in the pit lane from what we're hearing. It is for Lance Stroll. Waiting to see which tires have been fitted to the Canadian's car. Soft compound. Stroll should be good to go to the end. Fernando Alonso has DRS on Carlos Sainz. Will we pick it up on the world feed? Does not appear so. Waiting to see if we have any change of positions there for P10. Does not appear so. Sim Racing 604, the announcement from race control was a 5-second penalty for Sergio Perez. He apparently overtook somebody on that safety car restart before the safety car line, so 5 seconds will be appended to his race time. Sauber in the pit lane. For whom is this? It is for Charles Leclerc. He has entered the pits now, approaching his pit box. Leclerc pits from P7. We'll see where he resumes. Off of the super softs and onto the softs. Tidy pit stop by Sauber. Leclerc resumes. Vettel still has not stopped. He's done all 28 laps here on his super soft compound tires. I say 28 laps. We're working lap 25. We're counting the reconnaissance laps on those tires as well. Neither Vettel nor Bottas have stopped yet, positions 1 and 2. Expecting Hamilton to resume P2 once his teammate does stop. Ferrari don't need to be challenging the longevity of these tires. They are still going to be comfortably ahead on aggregate. Bottas, we do presume will inherit the race lead temporarily when Vettel stops, but Ferrari don't need to be pushing the lifespan of these tires. They're going to be well ahead once everybody shakes out in the pit stop order. Perhaps staying out so long could be inviting fate to intervene. I certainly hope not. But if Vettel's not complaining about anything, and we know the Ferrari is quite gentle on its tires, just remember all of those laps in Bahrain under those sordid circumstances, perhaps Ferrari are better with the tires than we think. GT Player 599, hello. Yes, the Red Bulls are gaining a little bit on Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen is only 1.4 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Ricciardo only 1.1 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Hamilton could well find himself behind both of the Red Bulls at this rate. That would be P5 for Lewis. We'll see. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel at the front. His super soft tires are definitely looking a bit worn. There is one of those characteristic black stripes down the side of his right front tire. Ferrari really need to be thinking of getting him into the pits now. There's no reason to continue running like this. And as I speak, Sebastian Vettel drives past the pit entrance yet again. It almost looked like he was going to enter because he was holding off to the left side of the circuit, but he's decided not to go into the pits. I wonder if Ferrari are still trying to figure out the finer points of their strategy, which doesn't really make all that much sense to me because they're going to be leading this race once they come out of the pits anyway on aggregate. What are they doing here? They're keeping Sebastian out a little bit longer than they need. Are they right on the border, I do wonder, of being able to fit another set of super softs rather than the softs? Perhaps that's why they're keeping Sebastian out for a little bit longer. We're going to have to see how that plays out. Meanwhile, down near Ricciardo on Max Verstappen. Verstappen not yielding that position quietly. They're continuing to battle into turn 2. Be careful. How they did not touch there is beyond me. Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen going into turn 2. Verstappen stuck it up the inside. Ricciardo was not yielding an inch. They very nearly interlocked wheels, but how these two men did not come together is beyond me. Meanwhile, fastest lap, Daniel Ricciardo, 145.883. He is the only car in the 145s at this moment. Norman Robinson, I don't know what you get out there, but we're being broadcast in the United States by ESPN2. If you are on Bermuda, I do assume that you get British terrestrial broadcasters as well, so if you know where Sky is, Sky Sports will also be carrying the race. Meanwhile, the two Red Bulls are not done yet, and Ricciardo with DRS on Max Verstappen, not close enough to make any sorts of moves quite yet, but he definitely wants that fourth place back. Hamilton Radio. Hamilton already doubting the longevity of his tires. Mercedes responding to him saying they should easily do the rest of the race. Hamilton not at all happy with that car today. He's not able to make any inroads on his teammate Valtteri Bottas. The gap between those two gentlemen is about 8 seconds. Bottas 10 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel, who still has yet to stop. We know that the Ferrari can make those super soft tires last for a long time, but they don't need to be doing that at this stage. Meanwhile, replays, Fernando Alonso locking up big time into turn 1. He has been able to continue. And a side note here, I do have to say Bermuda is an absolutely beautiful place. I was lucky enough to visit once, all the way back in 2003, spent 4 days on Bermuda. Very, very nice place to be. Yes, it was a cruise out of New York. And I did not see anything strange in the Bermuda Triangle. I've actually been in the Bermuda Triangle quite a few times, actually, because the northern tip of the triangle is obviously Bermuda, but it extends down to around Fort Lauderdale, Cape Canaveral, Florida, and then it extends to San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I've been in the Caribbean multiple times, many times through the triangle. I've never seen anything strange out there, for the record. Meanwhile, for the record, Sebastian Vettel continuing to run on these 32-lap-old super soft tires, starting lap 29 of the Grand Prix. When is Sebastian going to pit? Ferrari would not dream of not making a pit stop, because they have to make a pit stop according to the regulations. At this point, though, I would not be shocked if perhaps those super soft tires can go for quite some more distance, but from the onboard shots here with Sebastian, I'm still seeing that dark stripe down the inside shoulder of his right front tire. It's definitely indicative of some pretty heavy wear going on. It's also indicative of the very aggressive camber settings that Ferrari have dialed into this car. There's a noticeable difference now in the relative height of the tread surface of his particularly right front tire on the inside shoulder relative to the outside of the tire. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas now deciding to get with the program, setting fastest lap 145.827. Yes, Sebastian does need to make a pit stop to be okay according to the regulations. They must use 2 compounds when the race is dry. As there has been no rain falling in this race and the session has not been officially declared wet, he is under obligation to run at least 2 different compounds during the Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel pulling off to the left down start finish. Does he pit? Yes! Sebastian Vettel finally on lap 30 taking to the pit lane. 30 laps in the Grand Prix on those super soft tires. 34 laps in total on those tires. Looks like Ferrari are fitting soft compound tires to Vettel's car. They have released him safely on his way. Valtteri Bottas, meanwhile, inherits the race lead temporarily. We'll see where Vettel resumes relative to Lewis Hamilton, expecting him to be comfortably in second position. And indeed he is, just waiting for timing and scoring to shake out once again the gap between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Just waiting for Vettel to be reclassified on timing and scoring here. Currently shown as out, as in coming out of the pits. Waiting for that final interval to come through. Norman, interesting point. Could Lewis Hamilton be getting into a slump as he has lots of distractions outside of F1? Maybe. We're not seeing his performance so far this year. Then again, I'm led to believe that is also a car problem on the part of Mercedes. Hamilton has always had a very active lifestyle outside of racing, obviously concurrent to his racing, and so far it hasn't really played any havoc with his performances. He won his first world championship in 2008, and at that time he was a very different sort of driver and a very different sort of person. It did not appear that he really had too much going on outside of Formula One, but as he has matured, as he has grown as a person and also grown within this sport, he has gotten himself involved with many other extracurricular ventures, if you will, outside of the Formula One world, and he seems to be enjoying himself. His world championships in 2014, 2015, and 2017, obviously occurring within the context of everything else that he's been doing outside of racing, and he was able to do that without too much trouble. Honestly, I think it's more of a car problem so far this year, but definitely it is not down and out for Mercedes. We're still only working round 4. We have yet to start the proper European season. Obviously, that would be the Spanish Grand Prix, but we'll see what the future holds for Lewis Hamilton. For the last couple of seasons now, particularly in the beginning part of the year, we have heard these pseudo-tabloid stories of Lewis Hamilton perhaps considering calling time on his career. I still do think it is a little bit early to be considering that. This is Lewis Hamilton's 11th season in Formula One. It would be a little bit early for him to retire, particularly given the fact that he is still very competitive, but we'll see what the future holds for Lewis Hamilton, and certainly we'll see what this season holds for him. I do not discount him at any point yet for the World Championship this year, albeit he is having a bit of a slower start. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen resetting fastest lap 145.771. He's the only car running in the 45s at this time. He's 3.1 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, who is himself 7.9 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel, who is himself 11.7 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. When shall Bottas stop? Also, we can add to that, when shall both of the Red Bulls stop? Bottas, Verstappen, and Ricciardo all have 36 laps on their super soft compound tires. Obviously, they have yet to stop. Sebastian Vettel has proven that the super softs can last for quite a while, and Bottas, Verstappen, and Ricciardo continuing to prove that all the while. When will these guys make their pit stops? Jonathan, you're going to the 6 hours of Spa. Of course you're going to the 6 hours of Spa. I'm not jealous at all. Not in the least. That's a big lie. SimRacing604. Well, do I disagree about Formula E? Well, it's different. I'll say it's different. I'll say that it's something new, and it's something that I think warrants attention. It has decent racing action, but the reason for that is not because the cars are particularly impressive. It's because the circuits have been tailor-made for the lack of performance that the cars have to offer. Had Formula E cars been racing on typical permanent circuits, well, we would be seeing a very underwhelming display, because the top speed of a Formula E car, at least as they are now, it's only about 120 miles an hour, so that's not particularly impressive. I do know people who drive faster than that on their morning commutes, believe it or not. Not that you should be doing that, but I know people who do it. Formula E, it's new technology. It's a proving ground for obviously electric vehicles, and at some point it's going to become a proving ground for autonomous vehicles as well via Robo Race, which is going to be there to support Formula E. It's new technology. It's something that does warrant our attention as auto enthusiasts. Is it particularly interesting in terms of racing? It just lacks the performance. It lacks the prestige. It's interesting to see what the teams do with their powertrain setups in terms of their electric motors, their gearboxes or lack thereof, with their battery capacity as well. For Formula E to become something that really warrants our full-on attention, though, they need to be racing on permanent circuits like every other more traditional form of motorsport does. For them to be running on these bespoke street circuits that are barely wide enough for two cars to go side by side through, it's something that's still a little bit of a novelty. It's still a little bit of a bogey in terms of being able to judge their performance. And Ricciardo with DRS on Max Verstappen down the start-finish straight. Ricciardo very nearly overdoes it into turn one, a little bit of a lockup, but he is able to take that position over his teammate. Ricciardo now P4, Verstappen P5. Max Verstappen will have DRS now, heading in through the second DRS zone. Ricciardo all the while resets fastest lap at 145.419. Max Verstappen looking at his teammate, not close enough to make a move. These two Red Bull drivers have yet to make a pit stop, by the way, so they are undertaking this battle on 38-lap-old tires. Valtteri Bottas at the sharp end of the field has yet to stop either. Yes, one final point on Formula E. Even when they do race at Monaco, they're not running at the full circuit at Monaco. They're running basically Saint-Devote, and then they turn hard right and they head back down in the opposite direction toward the swimming pool. So they're not even running the full Monaco street circuit, and Monaco is the shortest track on the Formula One calendar. Lewis Hamilton responds with fastest lap 145.412. Sebastian Vettel running 145.839 last time by. Valtteri Bottas running 146.120. Mercedes are not really gaining anything by keeping Bottas out, but they're not really losing anything either. 39 laps on those super soft tires. Norman, if we get the Gen 2 Formula E car in our Factor 2 or Assetto Corsa, I'd definitely have a go in it. I think, like anything else, it's interesting, and if you have a chance to have a go in it, you take it, and you see what it is. But even with the Gen 2 car, with the improved performance, we no longer are going to have the spectacle of the pit stops involving car changes, because the batteries can't make the entire race distance. We'll see how it goes. I saw the Gen 2 car in person in New York a few weeks ago. It looked reasonably impressive. It looked well thought out. At the same time, though, it still looks a bit gimmicky. I don't see the reason why they have to design these cars to look like more conventional open-wheelers, because they're not conventional open-wheelers. Why not take some unique approaches to the design? Because you don't have to worry about cooling an internal combustion engine. You don't have to worry about packaging an exhaust system or things like that. Let them play a little bit more with the car design and start to produce things that are uniquely electric, and engineering solutions that are unique to electrical applications. That's how the EV industry is going to move forward, and trying to shoehorn an EV powertrain into basically a conventional package is kind of chasing your own tail. Lewis Hamilton now asking for blue flags. The reason why they don't do that is because each team would then have to bring 3 cars to every race, and that would just be 3 times the cost. Right now, they're bringing 2 cars to every race per driver, and that costs twice as much as a single car does, obviously. Gen 2, they're trying to lower the costs by having the teams just run 1 car for 1 race, like every other racing series does, usually. So that makes sense to me. I do agree that the Gen 2 car is a bit too bulky. They are still being produced in the mold of the traditional single-seaters that run normal internal combustion engines. If they were able to cut some of the packaging in the midsection there, I do realize that, yes, they do have to package the electric motor and the battery systems and the associated water radiators, believe it or not, for those batteries, because they do still get pretty hot. But if they were able to slim the cars down a little bit, make them lighter so they could go even faster, then maybe we're starting to play with something that's cool. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo pits from P5 in the Red Bull. Off with the old tires, on with the new tires. Ultra softs for Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo resumes in front of Stoffel van Dorn. Van Dorn, of course, a lap down. Ricciardo is in P5. Daniel Ricciardo overtaking in the pit lane approach. Will the stewards take a dim view on that? We shall see. I hope not. However, watching the IndyCar race in Long Beach with Sebastian Bourdais making that absolutely brilliant overtake into Turn 1, he used the pit exit to make that overtake happen. Race control over there, took a dim view on that, made him give the positions back. We'll see if Formula 1 was watching IndyCar a couple of weeks ago. Cameras have picked up Valtteri Bottas, who still has not taken to the pit lane, now working lap 38 of 51. Verstappen has taken to the pit lane. We're not seeing it on the world feed, but Verstappen is in the pits. I also presume he will go on to Ultra Softs. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas sets fastest lap. 1:45.149, I believe it was. Timing and scoring is not updated for me yet. Seeing Verstappen's pit stop now. On to Ultra Soft tires, just as his teammate did on the lap before. Verstappen crossing that white line as well on the pit out. We didn't see any action taken when Hamilton did it, so I don't presume we'll see any action for Verstappen doing it. Rather critically, Verstappen has resumed ahead of his teammate, now running P4 for Verstappen and P5 for Daniel Ricciardo. Bottas continues to lead the race out there by himself now to the tune of 12.3 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel. The tires of Valtteri Bottas are now 42 laps old. Single racer, good to see ya. It must be the middle of the night in Australia right now. Good to see you here. Kevin, is Bottas being Raikkonen? Yes, it's quite possible Mercedes are just keeping him out there to be a spoiler. He's still too far ahead of Sebastian Vettel to be doing any real damage to Vettel's race pace. The gap is 13.2 seconds between Bottas and Vettel right now, P1 and 2. Bottas obviously has a stop to make. They can't do a no-stop strategy here. They must make a pit stop according to the regulations. Daniel Ricciardo in the slipstream of Max Verstappen. Whoa! Big contact between the two Red Bulls. Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen. Ricciardo ran into the back of Max Verstappen. Both Red Bulls, I presume, out of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo, you ran into your teammate. You don't do that. Both cars out of the race. Yellow flags in sectors 1 and 3. This could well be a safety car. Ricciardo and Verstappen both stopped, still both sitting in their cars. Max Verstappen, he is moving in the cockpit. He is okay. There was no big impact with any barriers for either car, so not really concerned about the drivers being hurt in any way, but Max Verstappen just looks shell-shocked here. Both Red Bulls out of this race. Daniel Ricciardo now climbing out of his car. Safety car deployed. Safety car is out here, working lap 41 of 51. 10 laps to the end of this race. Valtteri Bottas now coming into the pit lane. Valtteri and Mercedes, I'm sorry, you should have pitted earlier. You could have been in the pound seat with this. In replay, Daniel Ricciardo with DRS on Max Verstappen. Verstappen did move into the braking zone. He moved to the inside of the circuit in the braking zone. However, Ricciardo just did not get on the brakes in time. On board with Daniel Ricciardo in replay. Let's see what the Australian saw. Verstappen moved once in the braking zone toward the inside. He is entitled to do that. He moved once. He was not weaving. He was just hit square in the back by his teammate. Unfortunately, I have to say, Daniel Ricciardo, that was your fault. The safety car will lead the field through the pit lane. We'll have to see what that means in terms of pit stops being made. Valtteri Bottas has already made his pit stop. He is now on the ultra-soft tires. Sebastian Vettel appears to have stopped as well onto the ultra-softs. Lewis Hamilton onto the ultra-softs. Raikkonen, Perez, and Grosjean now in the pit lane. Hartley in the pit lane. Van Dorn in the pit lane. Everybody, almost everybody, taking the opportunity to make what is effectively a free pit stop. Valtteri Bottas being classified ahead of Sebastian Vettel at this point. We're going to have to wait for timing and scoring to shake out here. All the gaps are messed up. I'm showing 17 seconds between Vettel and Bottas. We're going to have to see what happens here once the field stacks up behind the safety car. Those gaps should be diminished to almost nothing. Sebastian Vettel now catching up to the back of somebody. That is Valtteri Bottas. Bottas is ahead of Sebastian Vettel. That is confirmed on his ultra-soft tires. Timing and scoring is not in error there. Valtteri Bottas is in P1, Sebastian Vettel P2, Lewis Hamilton P3, Raikkonen P4. Perez has inherited P5. Romain Grosjean up into P6 from starting last. Charles Leclerc, another mover through the field. He is currently P8 behind Carlos Sainz. In P7, Lance Stroll, P9, Fernando Alonso, P10. Safety car is now going to lead the field down start finish per normal. They have cleared the incident in turn 1, at least to the satisfaction of the safety car driver. And Valtteri Bottas in replay making that pit stop. They were able to get out ahead of Sebastian Vettel before the safety car picked up the field. That was pivotal. That was very pivotal indeed. We now have a fight on our hands, though. With these 9 laps to the end of this race, it's going to be between Valtteri Bottas, Sebastian Vettel, and Lewis Hamilton for the win of this race. Kimi Räikkönen perhaps could be in that mix as well in P4. He is still 31 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Kimi's got to close the gap. Again, that replay of Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen. Ricciardo just went way too deep there. He really needed to be braking at least 50 meters before that point, and he just, I think the red mist came down and he was focusing on the back of his teammate and forgot where he was on the circuit. Adrian Newey in replay, walking off the Red Bull pit wall, absolutely disgusted. Christian Horner not looking too much happier there. Max Verstappen in replay in the cockpit. Jos Verstappen looking on. He looks like he has something to say to all of Australia right now. Race control now allowing lapped cars to overtake. This is still going to be a rather lengthy safety car period. 8 laps to go now. We will probably get a restart with 7 or 6 laps to go. It's going to be a mad dash to the line here. Valtteri Bottas has everything to lose. We are about to see a reversal of what happened in Bahrain about a month ago with Sebastian Vettel leading and Valtteri Bottas attacking. Here, Valtteri Bottas will be leading and Sebastian Vettel will be attacking. Sky Sports trying to talk to Christian Horner there. Obviously, Christian Horner being very careful with his words on television. Just saying we need to talk to our drivers. At this point, I would say Sebastian Vettel is going to win this race. We have seen Valtteri Bottas in a fight for the win earlier this year in Bahrain, and he was not able to convert anything. Vettel was on tires that were absolutely ancient, and for the 10 laps that Valtteri Bottas was in pursuit of Sebastian Vettel, at the end of that Bahrain Grand Prix, he was unable to convert that P2 into a P1, despite having the better car and the better tires at that moment. Can Bottas defend? It is very difficult to overtake here at this Baku street circuit. However, Sebastian Vettel will have DRS assistance, probably most importantly down the start-finish straight. Bottas will not have that luxury. DRS could definitely be in the hands of Sebastian Vettel here for this race win. We also have to think about Lewis Hamilton. He is sitting there in P3 behind Sebastian Vettel. Will he be able to make a charge at? And as I speak, Romain Grosjean has crashed behind the safety car. Grosjean was running in P6 at one point. From the end of the field at the start, Grosjean has stuffed it headlong into the barriers behind the safety car. We need a replay of this. And at this point, working lap 43 of 51, we now need to clear another crashed car. When will we get this race restarted now? Grosjean was doing some weaving, trying to get temperature in his tires, and he just lost the back end, stuffed it into the outside barriers there. This weekend just went from bad to really bad for Romain Grosjean. He was up into P6, having started at the back. We have the medical car deployed. I don't believe that would be for any sort of emergency situation. I think the medical car is just going to be out there to pick up Romain Grosjean, because I don't see anywhere he could easily climb through the barriers and get behind the wall. Daniel Ricciardo walking into the Red Bull trailer. Grosjean has crashed in a particularly bad spot. There is no gap in the fence there for the marshals to remove the car easily. The medical car has been dispatched. I presume once again that is to pick up Romain Grosjean. We need to get some sort of truck or a tractor out there to pick up this car, and there it is. There is the truck out there on the circuit to pick up that Haas. As narrow as this circuit is, I don't know how wise it is to have the safety car still out there. I would be throwing a red flag and stopping the field on start-finish. There is Romain Grosjean. Seeing him getting into the medical car there. Again, he is fine. The medical car is there just to give him a ride back to the pits. It's not there to take care of any injuries to Romain Grosjean. In replay, the first incident here, bringing out the safety car. Daniel Ricciardo getting into the back of Max Verstappen. Again, Red Bull are going to have a lot of soul-searching to do watching these replays. The golden rule of motorsport is you do not hit your teammate. And that is exactly what happened to Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen here today. The second incident under the safety car, Romain Grosjean just losing it as he's trying to warm up his tires, stuffing it into the outside barriers there, bringing out a truck to pick up what's left of that Haas car. Romain Grosjean unhurt in the incident. Neither were Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen in their incident. Norman Robinson, is Hamilton in contention to take P1 today? It's possible. It's just unclear at this point when we're going to get a restart. We're working lap 45 of 51. Safety car still out. There is still a Haas to be recovered, and there is still a truck to get off the circuit. We're going to be running out of time to get this race resumed if we remain under the safety car. SimRacing604. Did the accelerometers in Grosjean's helmet trigger the deployment of the medical car, or did they just deploy the medical car to get Grosjean off the circuit? We need some more word on that. If the medical car was triggered due to the forces that Grosjean experienced in the car, I would say that was done mostly because of the fact that Grosjean hit a barrier. And Ricciardo, although it appeared that his accident was worse, Ricciardo hit a car which was also moving in the same direction at roughly the same speed. So the decelerative forces experienced by Daniel Ricciardo would have been far less than the forces experienced by Romain Grosjean, despite Grosjean's incident happening at a much lower speed. The amount of resistance that Grosjean ran into by hitting the wall versus that which Ricciardo experienced by hitting another car would have been an order of magnitude higher. If we do get a restart in this race, and I certainly hope we do, we're going to have maybe 2 laps of racing to go once the safety car is stubbed down. I don't recall a race ending behind the safety car, and I could be wrong on this, but in my working memory, I don't recall a race ending behind the safety car all the way back to the Australian Grand Prix in 2009, when Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello took a brilliant 1-2 finish for Brawn. Again, I could be wrong on that. There have been a lot of races since 2009. The truck recovering the car of Romain Grosjean is still on the circuit. Again, there's basically nowhere for the truck to go except down the circuit. So we now have a moving recovery vehicle on the circuit with 14 race cars, obviously moving at reduced pace, but still that danger is there. Those of you remembering what occurred at Suzuka in 2014 will definitely be having some thoughts about that. Additionally, those of you who remember what happened to Maria de Villota in 2012 or 2013, I believe, in her straight line test with what was then the Marussia team, having trucks and Formula One cars in the same place at the same time doesn't quite mix very well. Lewis Hamilton having the same thought as me. Why are we having cars running out here with that truck on the circuit? It does appear to be not the ideal solution. As safety conscious as the FIA is, I don't understand why they've chosen to cover this under safety car rather than just a red flag on the start-finish straight. That would have been so easy to do. They want to keep the laps ticking down, I presume. I don't understand that decision. Stoffel Van Dorn complaining about tire temperatures. They just can't get heat into the tires running at this reduced pace. If we do get running again, that's going to be interesting into turn 1. Of course, if you are in the Valtteri Bottas pits, you are hoping that the safety car stays out forever and ever because your man is going to win the race without really having to fight for it, having been nowhere all day long. Safety car in this lap from race control. That's the official word. Safety car in this lap. We will resume on lap 48. We will have 3 laps of racing once we resume. Valtteri Bottas will lead the field across the line. Safety car has pulled away. Valtteri Bottas is now the de facto safety car. When will the Finn decide to release himself and thereby the rest of the field? Sebastian Vettel very close behind Valtteri Bottas right now, trying not to miss that jump when Bottas decides to put the pedal down. And here we go. Bottas has decided to jump for it. There's a little bit of a gap between Bottas and Sebastian Vettel as we come down start-finish. Lewis Hamilton right on the gearbox of Sebastian Vettel. Will Hamilton attempt an overtake on the Ferrari into turn 1? He is in the slipstream. Hamilton pulls out of the slipstream a little bit early, I must say. Will Hamilton attempt to outbrake into turn 1? No, Vettel has covered him off. Vettel dive-bombing down into turn 1 on Valtteri Bottas. He does not make that move stick. He loses P2 to Lewis Hamilton, and it appears that he's about to lose P3 to Kimi Räikkönen, and indeed he does. Sebastian Vettel attempting an overtake into turn 1 on Valtteri Bottas. He overcooks it. Cold tires and cold brakes. Sebastian Vettel in P4. Räikkönen up to P3. Hamilton up to P2. Now all of a sudden we're in for a Mercedes 1-2. Bottas leading Hamilton by 0.8 of a second. Now Mercedes team orders will come to the fore. Bottas will yield to Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton will all of a sudden be sitting pretty for his first win of the year. Sebastian Vettel, just a slight miscalculation that has proven to be very costly. From P2 to P4 in one corner. The championship implications of all of this, obviously we are early in the season, so it's a bit early to tell the overall trajectory of the championship, but Sebastian Vettel, he had his opportunity to extend his championship lead, and now he has squandered it. Valtteri Bottas pulling away from Lewis Hamilton. The gap is 1.6 seconds. The gap also, coincidentally, 1.6 seconds between Hamilton and Räikkönen. Räikkönen in P3 at this moment. It does not appear that Räikkönen has any answer for Lewis Hamilton in front of him at the moment. Sebastian Vettel now struggling with a flat-spotted left front wheel. He's going to find himself falling in the clutches. And we have a puncture! Valtteri Bottas with a right rear puncture. Lewis Hamilton has taken the lead of the race. Valtteri Bottas, right rear puncture. Kimi Räikkönen has now taken second position. Lewis Hamilton is your race leader. Valtteri Bottas limping that Mercedes through turns 1 and 2. Right rear is down on the car of Valtteri Bottas. The Mercedes 1-2 is not going to happen. We have a yellow flag in Sector 1. The carcass of that tire is now sitting someplace on the racetrack. The tire just delaminated in spectacular fashion on the car of Valtteri Bottas as he was in that braking zone approaching turn 1. Was there contact earlier on in the race that we did not see? Was it just a straight-up Pirelli failure? We do not know at this point. Bottas has found a gap in the fence and he has parked the Mercedes. He is done. The Mercedes 1-2 was going to happen, and now it is not going to happen. Kimi Räikkönen, 1.9 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Yellow flag still out in Sector 1, I presume for debris from the incident of Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton now in the pound seat to win this race in very improbable circumstances. Sebastian Vettel had this race controlled all day long. A strategy misjudgment by Ferrari. They couldn't really have predicted it because the safety car obviously was not predicted, but Valtteri Bottas making that pit stop essentially for free behind the safety car in the second safety car period, got a free pit stop, retained his lead which he had on the pit stop rotation. However, that set of ultra soft tires has failed him. Lewis Hamilton now beginning lap 50 of 51, 2 seconds ahead of Kimi Räikkönen in the number 2 Ferrari, P2 for Mr. Räikkönen. 2.1 seconds back from Räikkönen is Sergio Perez now in P3. Sebastian Vettel is in 4th place. Force India all of a sudden could be on for a podium here this afternoon. For the record, the stewards will be investigating Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen at the end of the race. Charles Leclerc now up into P13, and believe it or not, he is now the last car running. Marcus Ericsson in the other Sauber up into P10, so now points on the board for Sauber as they run now. Timing and scoring showing Leclerc now in P6. What is timing and scoring doing? It's so fast and frantic that the computers can't even pick up. Charles Leclerc in P6 confirmed. Marcus Ericsson in P11 confirmed. Brendan Hartley is your last car running in the points now in P10. In replay, once again, that tire failure by Valtteri Bottas. There was debris on the circuit at the start of the start-finish straight. Bottas hit that debris, and it delaminated the tire. Big, spectacular tire failure at the end of the start-finish straight for Valtteri Bottas. We had the safety car out for so many laps. The marshals didn't clear the circuit of that debris. That's very sloppy, and it has robbed Valtteri Bottas of a near certain victory. The final lap is underway. Lewis Hamilton has crossed start-finish for the penultimate time. 2.6 seconds is the gap between he and Kimi Räikkönen. All Lewis Hamilton has to do is just drive the car for one more lap and he will win the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Nobody could have scripted that one. Kimi Räikkönen 2.6 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. It appears that there is no answer from Ferrari for Mercedes today. Sebastian Vettel was looking at Sergio Perez there. He decided to back out of that potential maneuver. Could Vettel try and steal that final podium position to limit the damage that Lewis Hamilton is going to do to his championship lead here today? It's possible. Meanwhile, down the field, Fernando Alonso has overtaken Lance Stroll for P7. So points for Williams today. Just working the final 2 sectors of this lap now. Lewis Hamilton 3 seconds ahead of Kimi Räikkönen. The win is in the bag for Mercedes. They're on for their first win of the year here in round 4. Sergio Perez still holding in front of Sebastian Vettel for the final podium position. The gap is 1 second between Sergio Perez and Sebastian Vettel as we come down into Sector 3. Just waiting for the world feed now to pick up Lewis Hamilton as he brings us across the line. Here is the man of the hour in improbable circumstances, Lewis Hamilton, now coming down through the final corners, coming on to the 2-kilometer plus start-finish straight. Driving the car to the line is Lewis Hamilton, taking this very unexpected victory in the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. He only has a few hundred meters to go. He can see the checkered flag. Lewis Hamilton crosses the line to win the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Kimi Räikkönen finishes in second. Sergio Perez finishes in third. Sebastian Vettel, what seemed to be a certain victory for him today as he controlled the race from the start, finishes in P4 after being caught out by the late safety car and a last gasp pit stop by Mercedes for Valtteri Bottas, which gave Bottas the lead fair and square, only to be hampered by a tire failure brought on by hitting some debris that was left on the circuit. Lewis Hamilton was there to pick up the spoils and take the victory. Force India looking very happy to receive their first podium finish of the year. The biggest loser in all of this, though, has to be Sebastian Vettel. He did everything right, and it just didn't happen for him. I did not expect that result here today. The complexion of this race, looking at qualifying, appeared that it would have had Sebastian Vettel written all over it, and indeed the race did have Sebastian Vettel written all over it in the opening stages there. However, that late safety car threw a wrench in everybody's works, and Mercedes were there to pick up the spoils. The first win for Mercedes in 2018, the first win for Lewis Hamilton in 2018. The fight for the Drivers' Championship this year between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel is well and truly underway. Timing and scoring has now neutralized. Here is your final order as they cross the line here in the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Taking the win in improbable circumstances, car number 44, Lewis Hamilton of Mercedes. P2, Kimi Räikkönen for Ferrari. P3, Sergio Perez, a brilliant podium finish for the Mexican in the Force India. P4, Sebastian Vettel, the man who arguably should have won this race as he drove impeccably all day long. P4 for Sebastian Vettel. P5 for Carlos Sainz in the first of the Renaults, and P6, a brilliant career-best finish in Formula 1 for the Monegasque driver Charles Leclerc in the Sauber. P7 for Fernando Alonso in the first of the McLarens. P8, Lance Stroll for Williams. P9, Stoffel Van Dorn in the second McLaren. P10, the final point scored by Brendan Hartley for Toro Rosso. P11, Marcus Ericsson in the second Sauber. P12 for Pierre Gasly in the second Toro Rosso. P13 for Kevin Magnussen in the only remaining Haas. And P14, technically speaking, the last car classified, although he did not see the checkered flag, Valtteri Bottas. Retired from this race are Romain Grosjean, Max Verstappen, Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, and Sergei Sirotkin. The top three finishers have now made their way into Parc Fermé, Lewis Hamilton switching the car off, taking a quiet moment to himself before he begins the celebrations. Lewis Hamilton just very slowly putting the headrest back into the car. I can't say that Hamilton appears terribly animated here with this result. Certainly, it has come as quite a shock to all of us, and probably to him as well. Kimi Räikkönen has climbed out of his car as well, and he is heading straight in for the weighbridge. And it looks like we're going to see post-race interviews before the podium ceremony. This is interesting. David Coulthard has corralled the top three finishers right outside the weigh-in room. Lewis Hamilton definitely confirming our suspicions there. He says it feels a little bit odd to be up here. He definitely was not expecting that in the least. Kimi Räikkönen there, saying hi to his wife. Wait for the bois. Well, interesting here to see the impromptu, it appears, format change for the post-race proceedings. For those of you who care, Charles Leclerc has won Driver of the Day. Definitely that was deserved by the young Monegasque. Brilliant drive to P6. For the statisticians out there, this is Sauber's best finish since Felipe Nasser did it in 2015 at the Japanese Grand Prix. The drivers are now making their way onto the podium. All of the well-dressed dignitaries are already present there. Sergio Perez makes his way out onto the podium. He definitely looks happy to be where he is. Force India, never going to waste the opportunity for champagne spraying. Kimi Räikkönen now walking out, looking his typical animated self. We're awaiting Lewis Hamilton to make his way onto the podium. Sim Racing 604, thank you very much for joining us once again. Where is Lewis Hamilton? We're waiting for him on the podium. Lewis Hamilton, very late to the party. He's running up the stairs. He's just walking through the prep room now, giving him his Pirelli hat. And now Lewis Hamilton making his way up onto the podium. Nice of you to show up, Lewis. Stand by for the British and German national anthems. Lewis Hamilton realizes that he's costing his sponsors about $500,000 per second by having his overalls unzipped and pulled down. He puts them back into their proper positions to receive the winner's trophy. And evidently, the vice president of Azerbaijan is also the first lady of Azerbaijan. I won't say anything about these Banana Republic governments, but that's quite suspicious. Kimi Räikkönen there, looking understandably jubilant with his second place trophy. Sergio Perez and the entire Force India crew looking happy with their third place result. For those of you who are interested in the damage done to the Drivers' Championship today, here's how it works. We have Sebastian Vettel losing his championship lead to Lewis Hamilton, who now has it 70 points to Hamilton, 66 points for Sebastian Vettel. P3, Kimi Räikkönen with 48 points on the board. Valtteri Bottas in fourth with 40 points on the board, not adding to his total today. Daniel Ricciardo, neither adding to his total today, 37 points on the board in P5. Fernando Alonso, another 6 points in the Drivers' Championship in P6 with 28 on the board. Nico Hülkenberg in 7th with 22. Max Verstappen in P8 with 18 points on the board. Perez in 9th, adding 15 points to his total to 15 on the board. First points of the year for Perez. P10, Carlos Sainz with 10 more points on the board today. 13 is his total. P11, Pierre Gasly with 12. P12, Kevin Magnussen with 11 points. P13, Charles Leclerc with 8 points on the board, his first points of the year today. P14, Stoffel Van Dorn with 8 points in total, adding 2 to his total today. P15, Lance Stroll in the Drivers' Championship, getting his first points of the year, 4 points for him. Marcus Ericsson in 16th with 2 points. Ocon in 17th with 1 point. Hartley in 18th with 1 point, his first points of the year today. Grosjean in P19 with no points, and Sirotkin in P20 with no points. The story of the day, the Drivers' Championship. It has switched in its order at the front. Hamilton now leads the Drivers' Championship by 4 points over Sebastian Vettel. In the Constructors' standings, Ferrari took a little bit of a hit today. They scored 30 points today nonetheless. Ferrari leads the Constructors' Championship with 114 points over Mercedes with 110. P3, Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship, 55 points on the board. No more points for those boys today. P4 in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren with 36 points. P5, Renault with 35. P6, Force India with 16 points on the board. P7 is Toro Rosso with 13 points. P8, Haas with 11. P9, Sauber with 10. And P10, Williams with 4 points on the board. All the teams have scored now in 2018. Ultimately, the storyline of this race and how I will remember it is that Sebastian Vettel gave up the opportunity for a win. He just was a little bit too eager on that safety car restart, dive-bombing his way into turn one, which of course he is entitled to do, but he just did not appear to have the tire and or brake temperature to make that car stick into turn one. He went from P2 to P4 in one corner. That enabled Valtteri Bottas to start scampering away into the distance. A late puncture for Bottas meant that Lewis Hamilton was there to pick up the spoils and take the victory here today. Kimi Räikkönen a decent drive there for the Finn in P2, leading the charge for Ferrari P3. Sergio Perez, of course, in that Force India. Very good results for those guys as well. Sebastian Vettel, his consolation prize in all of this, P4, although that meant that he lost the lead in the Drivers' Championship this time around. It is certainly not all over quite yet. We do have quite a long way to go in this 2018 Formula One World Championship. The next race is coming to us from Spain. That will start on the 11th of May with Friday practice, Saturday practice, obviously following on May 12th, and the race on Sunday, May 13th, from Catalunya, just outside Barcelona, Spain, for the traditional opening round of the European segment of the Formula One World Championship. We'll have 66 laps from Catalunya. I am definitely looking forward to that race. It is one of my favorite of the year. To me, the Spanish Grand Prix is when the Formula One season well and truly gets underway. Some teams will be bringing some significant updates with them to Spain as well. McLaren are basically planning on an entirely new B-spec car, so we'll see how that gets on for Van Dorn and Alonso. And of course, the fight for the Drivers' Championship will continue in earnest from Catalunya in 2 weeks' time. Until then, though, we thank you very, very much for watching us here on the live stream. I thank you all for joining me here today. I'll open it up for some question and answers here in the next couple of minutes. Jonathan and Andy, you are very much welcome. The Sky presenter's now talking with Total Wolf. He certainly looks a bit happier than he did a few minutes ago as we were watching the Mercedes kind of languishing down there in the field a little bit by their standards, but they lost one car, but the other one took the victory, so I suppose that's a decent day to end. That's a decent way to end your day if you must end your day in that manner. Jonathan asking me, almost 4,000 subscribers, any specials coming? Not really. I don't really have the opportunity to do too many cool things in the day-to-day life, so unfortunately I'm not going to be driving a race car again anytime soon, so that's not going to be the 4,000 subscriber special. I don't know, I'll think of something. Norman Robinson, is this a regular broadcast or something special for this race? Well, I do try to do live commentaries for as many Grand Prix as I can during the course of the year. The beginning of the season, it's a little bit difficult for me to find the time and place to do it because I don't live by myself, and when the races are on in the middle of the night, I don't really get the opportunity to do the commentary. But in the summertime, things open up a little bit in terms of not only the race schedule, but in terms of my actual personal schedule as well. So there will be more live commentaries for the F1 races as we move into the middle part of the season. So I am planning to do Spain as well. Obviously, that'll be coming to us in 2 weeks. And for the Monaco Grand Prix, that is a big day for motorsport across the world. That is coming to us on the 27th of May. I'll be doing the Monaco Grand Prix, of course, and then later on I'll also be doing the Indy 500. So we'll have a double header that day for the Indy 500 and the Monaco Grand Prix, just as I did last year as well. That was a lot of fun. The Indy 500 this year, Jonathan, is on May 27th, so it is on the same day as the Monaco Grand Prix, just as it was last year and just as it typically is. The Indy 500, obviously, it's subject to weather. They don't race on ovals in the rain. However, the weather is typically quite good for the Indy 500, so we're expecting a doubleheader on May 27th for the Monaco Grand Prix, as well as for the Indy 500. Last year I covered it because Fernando Alonso was racing, but I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of you enjoyed it as well, so I'll continue my Indy 500 coverage this year. The cool thing about last year's Indy 500 was that Fernando Alonso had a legitimate chance to win it, but Honda, the power of dreams, struck again. Sky Sports speaking with Max Verstappen. He's had a chance to collect his thoughts a bit. They were asking him if the team had told either driver to yield to the other, and his answer is a little bit cryptic, but do not appear that there were any team orders there on the Red Bull pit wall, and certainly the result is indicative of that. Norman Robinson, I don't do things like that with recreating races in sim racing, but there was a guy last year at very least who was actually doing very good recreations of the real-world Formula One races using F1 2016, the video game, and I don't know if he's still active. I don't remember the name of that channel, but he did some great work, and I don't know if he's still doing it, but he did a lot of stuff. Sky Sports here taking another look with Anthony Davidson. Good to see him. At that incident between Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen down into Turn 1. What does Anthony Davidson think of all this? We're seeing a replay of the start right now on Sky. We're not seeing the incident, as we are now calling it, between Verstappen and Ricciardo. We'll be seeing that shortly, I do presume. In replay, the contact between the Red Bulls into Turn 1 earlier on in the race. Anthony Davidson's analysis saying that this point was already where things started to get out of hand. I do tend to agree with that assessment. If I were on the Red Bull pit wall at that point, I'd have said, hey guys, hold station. And now we're seeing the big incident here. No, we're not seeing the big incident yet. We're seeing the same incident before from Verstappen's point of view. Just a little bit of contact there between the Red Bull cars at that particular juncture. Nothing really to worry about. Neither car was damaged from what I could see. Jonathan Straitman, I don't really have an answer for you in terms of why Mike has more subscribers than me, even though I've been doing this for quite a bit longer than he has. Honestly, I think it has to do with his presentation. He's a bit more polished than I am in terms of his overall presentation, and he's a bit more consistent as well in his presentation. He does quite a few things better than me. He does the thumbnails better than I do, for sure. He is a bit more diverse as well in the sort of content that he features, not only in the types of cars that he drives, but in the sims that he features. For the most part, I only feature Assetto Corsa and occasionally R Factor 2 and F1 2017. He just has some more tools available to him. He's got Automobilista, which unfortunately I've never been able to get to run right on my computer for some reason. I do own it, I have run it, and I would love to do videos in it, but I can't get it to run correctly. And Mike also, he's more consistent in terms of his voiceover content, which he does quite more often than I do. Not necessarily because I don't want to do it, but I just don't have the time to do it. I do work a full-time job, and I do work on the weekends quite often, so I just don't have the time to make that sort of content nearly as often as Mike does. So I think that's mostly the reason why there's a little bit of a disparity now in our subscriber counts. And by no means am I saying that's a bad thing. Mike does a great job, and I'm happy to see him become a bit successful in all of this, just as I'm happy to see my own audience grow. But I have to say, Mike does quite a few things better than I do, and that's totally all right. Marfran, welcome, first of all. And yes, secondly, you're asking a very important question. Why the 601 number? Well, here's the story behind 601. First of all, the number has absolutely no significance to me whatsoever. The story behind it. Initially, I joined YouTube in 2007, and it was not this channel. I had another channel on YouTube. That one was called Ferrariman601. I chose the number 60 because of 2007 being the 60th year of Ferrari, and I thought, hey, this sounds cool. I actually remembered I made the decision to make the account while I was watching the 2007 Spanish Grand Prix. So there's the story of how I joined YouTube. On that channel, though, you must also remember that I was a young kid. I was 14, 15 years old, and I didn't really have a good computer at the time. I wasn't really playing so much with sim racing. I certainly didn't know anything about video capture or anything like that at the time. So the content that I had on that channel was mostly ripped real-world Formula One content. I was posting onboard videos of qualifying laps and things, and of course you're not allowed to do that. So I was banned from YouTube in 2009, I believe it was, when they finally just gave me the last straw. So Ferrariman601 is no more. If you hunt around on some of the older Formula One videos, you might find some comments by Ferrariman601. The comments are still there, but the channel is not. I decided then, well, I want to play with this YouTube game. I want to show some sim racing videos, so I made a second account, and the logical progression in my mind at the time anyway was, well, I had Ferrariman601, so let's call this one Ferrariman601. It's the next one in the series. So that's how the name came to be. The roots of the Ferrariman name, though, actually go all the way back to the old days of AOL Instant Messenger. If anyone remembers AIM and the instant messaging chats that you used to be able to have with everybody on your buddy list, as it was back then. This is before MySpace. This is before YouTube. This is just old school internet instant messaging. My AOL screen name, the America Online screen name that I used to have, was Ferrariman423. There's the root of the Ferrariman name. Is 601 an area code? It probably is. It's not my area code. I don't know where that pertains, but it probably is an area code, but it's not meant to represent an area code for me. I do have to agree with that assessment. This race was Sebastian Vettel's until that lockup, heading toward the end of the race there into turn one. He gave it up, and he had to go for it. And I think if you were to talk to Sebastian Vettel, he would tell you exactly that. I'm running out of time. I see an opportunity. If you no longer go for a gap and all of that stuff. So I think Sebastian Vettel was right to go for it. Unfortunately, it was just a bit misjudged. I think his tires and brakes were a little bit cold off of the restart, and it just didn't work out for him. He lost 2 positions in that incident, and that could well have ended up costing him the race, but here we sit now. At any rate, though, does anybody else have any questions for me before we call it quits here? Yes, Ferrari are still leading the Constructors' Championship, albeit narrowly, but they are leading the Constructors' Championship heading into the Spanish Grand Prix. That's a good place to be for the start of the European season, undoubtedly. Sebastian Vettel, though, by no means is he out of this. He has taken 2 victories so far this year, and we've only had 4 races, so Sebastian Vettel still has a 50% rate of victory here in 2018. By no means can we count him out. I still think that the Ferrari is the better car than the Mercedes. Mercedes just got very lucky today. For the record, Valtteri Bottas set the fastest lap of the race, 1:45.149. If one could only win one race in Formula One, would one want to win in round one, Juan? Well, yes, that is, I believe that dates back to the 2002 Australian Grand Prix. There were a couple of Australian comedians who made their way into the pre-race press conference, and they asked that very convoluted question to Juan Pablo Montoya. Obviously, they are playing with the sound of his name, Juan, and the sound of the word one for Formula One and round one, so you got the idea. Juan Pablo Montoya, for the record, walked out of that press conference. Marfran asking, are you going to see the race this year? What race are you referring to? If you're referring to the United States Grand Prix, I don't have any way to get out to Texas to see that, nor do I have any way to get up to Montreal to see the Canadian Grand Prix. I am planning on going to the IndyCar race at Pocono Speedway in Pennsylvania. That's a lot closer to me, and that's an easily drivable distance, so I am planning to see that in August of this year, but I have no plans to go to a Formula One race this year. Yes, Pocono is a great racetrack. It's just a great atmosphere there. I was really impressed by how well kept the entire place is. Both the racetrack and the infield and the grandstands, everything is just immaculate. The people there also were very nice. The staff were brilliantly well drilled. Everything just ran like a Swiss watch, as it were. And definitely the IR-18, the new Indy car for this year, it is a fantastic looking piece of kit, and it's already delivered some pretty good racing. Any other questions for me? And yes, my friend, I have to say the new IndyCar this year looks a lot better than Formula One, mostly because IndyCar doesn't have a halo, but a few other design elements on the IR18 that I really like. You've got a very simple front wing on it, so the cars can follow closely nose to tail. The rear wing is wide and low, and we've got ground effect. Yes, ground effect in IndyCar. It is fantastic. Flat bottom with some Venturi tunnels underneath for good measure. That's really helping them with their following distances on ovals as well as their high-speed corners on the road courses. IndyCar doesn't really see too many high-speed corners on most of their road courses, though. Again, a lot of their road races are actually on street circuits, temporary circuits, so they tend to have basically low-speed 90-degree corners, but a couple of high-speed corners like at Barber that we visited last week, for example. The infield chicane is really fast. There's a lot of downforce there in the high-speed corners thanks to that ground effect, which is nice. But it's really going to come to the fore on ovals. When we see the Indy cars running around Indianapolis, they'll be able to follow nose to tail through the corners there, really without lifting off the throttle. So it's going to be really fast. Do I play any other games other than Sims? Well, I gotta really think about this one. No. Whatever I'm playing, it's a simulator of some sort, whether it's cars or trains or planes. Yeah. I'm a fan of Sims, I always have been. Honorable mention to Kerbal Space Program. ESPN has cut away from the Formula One coverage. Obviously, Sky Sports will most likely be continuing their post-race coverages and commentary, but we don't get to see that anymore in the United States. Dr. XEU, do you like the London Underground? I only know the London Underground as the subway system in London, the Tube as they call it. I have no idea if that's a game or not. Motorsports Simulator Manager. I've played the iOS, the mobile version of that. It's kind of fun. I think it kind of loses some replay value after a little while. I've never played the PC version of it. I'm led to believe that it's a little bit more in depth, but the same overall concept. I don't know. I've got the mobile version. Doesn't really make me want to go out and buy the full PC version. Interesting question, Norman. Is VR sim racing the future, or will triple screens reign for the foreseeable future? A little bit hard to tell. I think one of the things that's hampering a lot of people from adopting VR is not only the cost of the headsets, but you've also got to make sure that you've got the right system specs to run it. For example, as I'm configured right now, I can't run VR because I don't have a proper graphics card. I mean, I've got a good graphics card, don't get me wrong. I need to pull up specs here. What exactly am I running for my graphics card? I should know this off the top of my head, but I do not. I do apologize greatly. Graphics via Spec-C. What are we running? Yep. NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 with 6 gigs of RAM there, GRAM. It's not good enough to run an Oculus Rift. I have an Oculus Rift. I've yet to run it properly because I just don't have the extra graphics capacity. I need like a 1080 card at very least. However, the prices of graphics cards are still rather prohibitive because of cryptocurrency mining. People are using GPUs for extra processing power so they can get their fractions of a cent via cryptocurrencies, which are probably going to tank anyway. So graphics card prices are now prohibitively high, so I think a lot of people, such as myself, who are trying to adopt VR, we're hampered by real-world costs at the moment. But GPU suppliers have announced that they're going to be lowering prices artificially, simply because they realize that the cryptocurrency people have robbed most of their market share of actual consumers, so they're going to have to take a little bit of a bullet here to save their long-term business, because cryptocurrency is a fad, let's say. It's definitely not going to stay for too much longer, I don't think. In terms of the overall the prognosis for the future, VR is definitely going to be the way to go. Triple screen setups are prohibitive as well for a lot of people, just because of space constraints that they've got. A lot of people just don't have the spare desk or table space for triple screens, nor do they really want to be bothered with all of the mounting hardware and then trying to get the field of view just right to get it to work. VR, you don't have to worry about field of view. It's your eyes. So I think VR is the way to go for the future, but we do need to get these GPU prices down. Any other final thoughts or questions for me as we wrap up our coverage here today? How realistic is a full motion sim compared to an actual F1 car? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm trying to think if I've ever run in a full motion sim. I don't think I ever have. And of course, I've never driven a Formula One car. I'd imagine that some of the in-car forces could be replicated decently, bumps, things like that, chatter through the tires, but there's really no way to replicate the G-forces. So a full motion sim, it might be able to offer you a little bit more in terms of tactile feedback, but you're never going to be able to simulate the G-forces, so it could only be so realistic. I suppose if you had some sort of a system that would enable you to wear a helmet and then it would push your head around with the G-forces, you could get closer still, but by that point you're talking about so much equipment, you may as well pay for a drive in a Formula One car. So I don't think that you're ever really going to be able to replicate it 100%, at least not with current technology. I will say that for consumer-grade sims, when I drove the Formula 2000 car last year, I was very amazed at just how much I already knew from practicing at Pocono on iRacing. And there were no surprises for me at all. I knew where the curbing was. I knew where the bumps were. I knew generally the sort of characteristics of the track surface. And I also had a very decent idea of how the car was going to be reacting. So I was amazed at just how much I already knew, at how not steep the learning curve was. But at the same time, the in-car forces are something that you just can't replicate. You can only feel that in the real world, again, at least for the moment. Someday, maybe we'll be able to get there, but we're not there yet. JCL, I've never heard of that before. I might have to consult the Google here. Looks like JCL is a manufacturer of sim racing peripherals. I'm seeing a direct drive steering wheel, encoders for motion rigs, chassis setups for mounting your hardware, your pedals and wheels, things like that. I've never heard of this guy before. Apparently they're putting together some pretty cool peripherals and some pretty cool equipment. Interesting. It's cool to see different sectors of electronics industry starting to get involved in sim racing. It's definitely indicative of good times to come for us in this world and in this hobby. Again, the pricing on a lot of this is quite prohibitive. You could almost put together a real world race car for the prices of some of this stuff. But if you just don't have the resources to go racing in the real world, this is as close as you're going to get, I guess. Is it comfortable to play VR wearing eyeglasses? I don't know. I've never really tried it. It's possible to do for sure. Is it comfortable? I'd have to do it more to really tell you. I actually do wear glasses to drive, and not only in the real world but in sims as well. And I have no problems with it. Obviously, just looking at a monitor. With VR, I haven't really tried it, but there is enough room to get them behind an Oculus Rift. So I guess it's like anything else. You just have to get used to it. One concern that I would have, though, would be having your glasses mist up, because you really don't get any airflow between your face and the VR headset there. So the fogging or misting could be a little bit of a concern in there, I guess. We are approaching the 3-hour mark in this stream, though. I am going to be bugging out of here in just a couple of seconds. I would, however, like to thank all of you very much for joining me today, not only for the race, but for sticking around for a little impromptu discussion afterwards. I definitely appreciate all of your attention and all of your engagement with this channel. Again, I've had more success with this channel than I ever thought I would, and again, it's still very small by all of the big YouTuber standards, but I really do enjoy it, and I'm going to continue doing this for as long as it's feasible. It's definitely not going to make me rich, but I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it simply because I like sim racing, and I like Formula 1, and I do enjoy the opportunity to share all of it with all of you guys. So definitely, you'll see me for the Spanish Grand Prix in 2 weeks, and from there on out, at least through the middle part of the season, and hopefully through the end of the Formula 1 season as well, the sim racing content will continue. If you do have any ideas for things that you would like me to feature in the normal videos here, or for the reviews that I do, definitely let me know in the comments section on one of my videos. Any one of them will do. I will find it. So do take care, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. Ferrariman601 saying thanks, and we will see you soon.